Hello, this is Professor Gallant, and I'm going to show you a few things about setting up the Canon DSLRs for shooting, and proper procedures, and how you should set the settings in the camera for shooting for this class. Okay, well, first of all, you have to turn the camera on. So go ahead, and the on switch is usually on the side here. Sometimes it's over on the top, but it's pretty obvious. One of the neat thing about some of these cameras, the 7Ds particularly, is, and there's actually one other camera that does it, that has live view, which means you're actually able to see through the lens, through the LCD in the back of the camera. But that's not something you should count on, so just disregard that. The first thing that you want to do in setting up the camera is to go into the menu. That's where most of the items that you're going to find that you need to adjust are. So hit the menu button, and it'll come into this menu. This is pretty typical of all Canon DSLRs, is that they have these different little tabs here that you could go from one thing or another. Usually the first one is the most important one, and this is one I want you to pay particular attention to because it's going to set up the type of file that you're going to shoot your pictures on. And we've talked about this before, and I'm going to mention it again, that basically what I want you to do is always shoot your pictures in RAW, R-A-W, like raw meat, which that means that the file is uncompressed. It is as large as it possibly can get. It gives you a lot of control, and we'll talk about it later on, but simply just put your camera in RAW. So the first thing it will say is quality, and once you can use either the circular button on the back if you have one of those, or some of the other buttons here, but you can move up and down with the toggle. There's a few different controls depending on the Canon camera you have, but play around with it. You're not going to break anything. Find out what allows you to go through the items in the menu. Find quality, and there's a middle button, or you can actually hit in the middle of the toggle and enter right there. And what it does is it allows you to go and set up the type of images. And you can shoot them as JPEGs, or you can shoot them as RAW images. This camera is a little more complex than the other ones, but once again, go and find this quality setting, look for RAW, and punch in that you want to shoot in RAW. Find RAW, accept it, and make sure that it says next to quality, RAW. The cameras will allow you to set up RAW to simultaneously shoot on RAW and large JPEG size or small JPEG size. It's up to you if you want to do that. What it might do for you is save you time and not have you have to go into a program to export your images as a JPEG, but it's going to take up some of the card space, some of the little memory space in the camera, and so it's not going to allow you to shoot as many images. So I just say simply shoot RAW, and there will be a tutorial on how to save RAW images in iPhoto as JPEGs later on. But right now, just make sure that you shoot all your images in RAW, because that's really important for some of the things we're going to do, and will get you out of a lot of problems. The other settings are kind of obvious. Things like beep, whether you hit buttons and they beep or not. Flash control. We're not really going to do a lot of flash in this class, just because we're more concerned with the basics of photography. White balance, exposure compensation, custom white balance. Some of these things you are going to want to change possibly, but probably all the settings are fine the way they are. If you shoot in RAW, you can change a lot of these things later on in an editing program. But white balance, that's something that you're probably going to want to change right away. And there's a lot of different symbols here. There's one that looks like a sun, one that looks like a light bulb, one that looks like a lightning bolt. There's lots of different things. If you're lucky enough to have one of the better cameras like this camera, the 7D, it allows you in Kelvin to change the temperature that the camera sees light at. Right now it's set at 3000 Kelvin. But for everyday shooting, so that you don't have to worry about it so much, you're going to want to set your camera in AWB, which stands for auto white balance. That's really important. So, and this thing, you basically, this control wheel back here, I find my selection and I hit set in the middle, and actually my white balance says here AWB. So it's auto white balance, it's set for that. Color space, a lot of people like to set it in Adobe because they work in Adobe a lot, but I just keep it at sRGB. It's a basic setting, and there's really no need to change that. There's some other things in here that you might want to change. This is a very important one right here. It allows you to go in, it's a blue symbol with a play button symbol, like a little triangle play symbol there. And it allows you to go in and do a lot of things to the image, but most importantly, to erase the images. So if you want to erase images, you could select and erase images, all images in a folder if you create folders with inside your card, which you can do through the settings, or all images on the card. So you can either select and erase certain images or erase all the images on the card. I'm not going to do that right now. I'm going to hit menu and go back, but you can just basically, after you've shot and downloaded all your photos, if you want to erase them, you can erase them right there. I would not recommend erasing your photos after downloading them. There's a setting in iPhoto that allows you just to erase them afterwards. Sometimes there will be a glitch in the connection, and it won't actually save your images, but it will actually, in fact, erase all your images, so you'll have to start from square one again. You'll have to go back and shoot all your images again. And it's kind of horrifying when that happens. It's happened to me once, and I will not do that again. Okay, see if there's anything else in here that's really important. Well, you can see there's a lot of controls in here that you can go into. Yeah, I mean, basically the most important things that you want to set in this camera are quality at RAW. You want to set, make sure exposure compensation is at 0, the way it is normally. But also, another important thing, white balance at AWB. After you set those things, you can hit menu and get out of it. There's usually a button on your camera that says ISO, and it's on the top of this camera. I'll push that. And typically, if I'm going to, I'm changing the exposure compensation there. Don't want to do that. Make sure that your exposure compensation is always at 0, whether it's for flash or for just regular pictures. Just putting it in the middle at 0 is always a good idea. But click ISO and go through there. You can actually you can see it through live view on this camera. You can see the picture getting darker, and that's because I'm lowering the sensitivity of the camera to ISO 100, which is where it is right there. For most photographs, especially on a sunny day, you want to shoot in ISO 100. Why would you want to shoot in ISO 100? Well, it has lower sensitivity, allows you to open up the lens so that you can use a shallow depth of field, which is kind of a neat effect, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But another thing is that it gives you the finest quality picture, the highest quality picture you possibly can. The grain is very minute and small, and it really makes for a lot of great detail. So that's a really important thing. So I usually set it at ISO 100 unless I'm going someplace where it's a little bit darker. If it's a little bit darker, a little bit overcast, I might shoot ISO 200 or 400. Those are the ISO settings that most film were sold at, 100, 200, and 400 when I was a kid, when I was younger. And then, typically people that shot sports might shoot ISO 800. There was 800 film, and that was a good rating. That was a doubling of the sensitivity from 400, which is a pretty fast speed. And then 1600, people were shooting 1600 inside gyms, basketball games inside gyms at night. That was pretty typical. 3200, very low light photography, and a high setting in most of the cameras, it's called H. It'd be 6400. This camera is unusual in that it is better than most of the cameras we have. We don't have a lot of these cameras, but it actually goes to 12,800. There's a lot of noise in that, and you can see the picture is over exposed right now. It's really, so you'd have to use a very low, almost closed iris, and you'd have to use a high shutter speed to shoot that ISO. But there'd be no reason to shoot that ISO in this kind of daylight. But it's there. It's if you're doing low light photography, and it's pretty amazing. But typically, start with 100 and go up from there, depending on what you're shooting. But on a bright day, outdoors, 100 and plus. You can also use 100 if you use a tripod, because you can use slow shutter speeds and it won't vibrate the camera and make for a blurry picture. So those are the most important settings. ISO, your auto white balance, so that you don't have to think about the Kelvin, the temperature of the light. The camera just figures it out for you for the most part. And the file type, which is RAW. You want to shoot in RAW and then save it as a JPEG later on. And those are the most important things about your Canon cameras. So that's it. All right.